Where's Fielder? He's gone to the dogs.
Welcome to the Gone to the Dogs podcast. This old coon hunter, Steve Fielder, made it. Was able to sit up and take nourishment this morning, and I've had a busy day. And now it is evening and time to kick back for some dog talk at its finest. And I guarantee you we're going to have a good conversation today because in the house is Mr. Corey Gruver from Greenville, Pennsylvania. Correct?
Yes, sir. Howdy, Steve.
Hey, Corey, what's up, brother?
Not a whole lot. I'm glad to be back.
Yeah, man. I was looking on our schedule back. It's been about almost. Has it been a year since we were on together? Hadn't been that long, has it?
I don't think it's been. It doesn't feel like it's been.
Seemed
that long
to me
anyway.
like it was like in June.
Yeah,
or
well,
something. That's almost a year.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, the days just rush by anymore. It's crazy.
Tell me about it. Tell me about it. Well, I was reviewing some stats this week.
Okay.
And looking back over the episodes that did the best, and yours was right up there, well above average.
Oh, wow.
Up probably in the upper tier in numbers of downloads. So, it's all about the money,
Yeah. That's something I never heard in high school. I can tell you that much.
Oh, man. Anybody thinks that they can make a living doing this?
They're sorely mistaken.
Oh, man. If you don't love it, you might as well try something else.
Yeah.
But real encouraged this week. Had a great conversation with the man that pays the bills, Buddy Woodbury out at W Hunting Supply. Buddy's a guy that's got his heart in the right place, I tell you, when it comes to hound hunting. Has done a lot, really, on the legislative scene out in the West and with some of the big game hunting organizations and all. Their focus, I guess, from the start was heavily into big game hunting because of their location. He's out in Washington State.
Yeah.
And Jason Doobie, that works for him and all, is in Oregon. So those guys are out on the left coast, so to speak. But Buddy's a great guy, and he has really he loves this podcasting thing and wants to see it go forward. And of course, they pump me up. I think they're just trying to convince me, that the podcast is doing better than it is. But from all indications, it's doing very, very well, and I'm very gratified by that, Corey.
Well, you got to keep the cash cow well fed,
Oh, brother. Yeah, well, I enjoy doing this, and you and I probably wouldn't be sitting here looking at each other on a laptop screen if it weren't for this. And so it's been a unique addition to a long-time resume that goes all the way back to the hills of southern West Virginia, serving as a secretary in a coon club when I was a teenager, and going to the club meetings and listening to all the old guys gripe and complain about how I spent the money. And which they were the same ones that were sitting there grumbling when I was dragging the drag for the field trial and cranking the cage across the pond for the water race and selling the soda,
man, a one-man band.
And ordering the trophies. That was a trip, man, back in the day. You have to go to somebody like Bill Boatman or company, and they sold these packages of trophies.
Yeah.
You could get first through 10th place, a night champion and a grand night champion for X number of dollars. And then you could get a bench show arrangement. best male, best female show, champion male, or champion. Back in those days, there were no division between the sexes in champion shows.
Yeah.
Anyway, it
I'll tell you
was,
what, that's one of my favorite things to look at as far as historical documents is I love looking at if I can find an advertisement for an old event at a coon club. I just recently started to go through the archives of my own personal coon club here in Greenville, and I found an advertisement had to have been from the early 1960s or something like that. But pretty standard coonhound event
mm-hmm.
advertisement. We ran mule shows in conjunction with a lot of our events back in those days, and I always get a kick out of the extracurricular activities that went on at those events. Some of the stuff they just did to engage the people that were there.
Yeah.
One contest that they had was a tobacco spitting contest, if you can believe it. They had a
Yeah.
tobacco spitting contest. They had a greased pig. Somebody would bring a greased pig and make the kids go catch it.
Oh man.
Oh, man.
Yeah, well, that was it. When you had an event at your coon club, it was an all day deal.
Yeah.
Uh, and it's really changed. Of course, we get everything now on the internet. We just dial up the UKC site and go to coonhound events and click in the state or the date, and boom, all the info's there.
Yeah, it's something, isn't it?
Back in the day, and I've kind of talked about this before, I think, but there was a requirement that a club that was going to hold a licensed event had to advertise in a coonhound magazine the month preceding the event.
No kidding.
So if you had a March event, you had to be in the February issue of one of the three magazines, American Cooner, Full Cry, or Coonhound Bloodlines. And that was one of the things I've talked about before, and I'll try to skip over that. But that was one of the things that I really was convinced that we needed to do when I went to UKC was provide all that information in our magazine, Coonhound Bloodlines, and give folks a reason to take the magazine, because we had a tenth of the subscribers that Cooner did or Full Cry did back in 1983.
Right.
So, but to look back, you would get your magazine, and usually American Cooner had most of those ads. It's always kind of been the Competition Hunters magazine. They would run the picture of the ACHA World Hunt winner, which at that day was the only world hunt, really.
Okay.
In the November issue, the hunt would take place in October. They'd run it in the November issue on the cover. So you'd know who the world champion was and all. But when we get that magazine, you look through there, and the clubs would take out a quarter-page ad. Almost all of them would do a quarter page, and it would say something like UKC license wild coon hunt. And it would say entry fee would be typically something like $10,
Sure.
maybe $5. Uh, and then a bench show at 2 o'clock, night hunt entries. And it always had that no alcoholic beverages or unprescribed drugs,
Oh, yeah.
um, and uh, and that sort of thing. And that was about it, unless they added, like you said, those events. Now, in Texas, when I first started going out there, I learned the term event. If
Event.
event, if
Okay.
you had an event dog, that meant you were in the coon on the log, coon in a cage,
Oh.
coon in a hole, all these kind of things that we'd all go to jail for doing today. But they had all kinds of events throughout the day that you could. And then the clubs kind of continue that where they're able with the rolling cage events and things like that down through the years. But yeah, that was the thing. And you kind of went to the index in the back, and I knew I could go. I could persuade my dad to go to Eastern Ohio or Western Virginia or West Virginia before I could drive. Dad, I'd have to do some campaigning to
Oh
get him
yeah.
to
Oh yeah.
permit or to drive 3 hours to a hunt.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I'm
yeah.
there with you on that. I had to do a lot of that. I learned a lot about politics, from doing that, you know.
Oh yeah. My wife says it was funny when her sisters always wondered, how do you get to do all the stuff that we don't get to do? She was younger than them.
Yeah.
And she said, well, you just don't do it right, you know?
Well, hey, since you brought up West Virginia, did I ever tell you the story about the time that I was probably 16 or 17, the time that I left Pennsylvania to go to a hunt in Ohio, and I ended up in West Virginia? Okay, so when I was a kid, there was I believe this club still is in existence and thriving and everything like that. But Cadiz, Ohio,
Oh, yeah.
Cadiz, Cadiz,
No,
Ohio.
well, I used to live up near there. That's
Okay,
where
all right.
my black and tan buddy
Oh yeah.
lived, the older
Well,
gentleman.
I don't know if they do it now or not, but they used to have a really big black and tan sectional there, and
Yeah.
and they would also have an RQE event every year. So one year I convinced my dad to let me drive down solo to the RQE down there, and it was just a pinch over 2.5 hours from the house. It was a pretty substantial drive for a kid my age. And I drove down to the club. I got my dog entered and everything like that, and we went hunting. And later that night, I came back to the clubhouse, ate breakfast, and then I got on the road. And this was a little bit before advanced GPS and stuff like that, and I'm driving along, and all of a sudden I see signs that say "Welcome to West Virginia," and it's like 3 or 4 in the morning, and I'm exhausted, so I'm just looking blurry eyed at this sign, like, how the heck did I get to West Virginia?
You must have gone through the panhandle there.
Yes,
Who
sir.
was, I'm good. I hate myself right now. Who was the older gentleman that lived in Cadiz, uh, there, hunted black and tans? Oh, man.
You're gonna
He
make me
may
feel
have
bad for
passed
not
on
knowing.
before your time. You may have heard me misspeak right there and call it Cadiz. That's what they call it
You're
in
you're not talk
Kentucky.
you're not talking about Ron Stein, are you?
Nope, nope,
Okay, not
no,
Ron
I know
Stein.
Ron.
He was from
No,
Southern
this is an
Ohio.
older gentleman, and his name's going to come to me as soon as this recording is over. And maybe I'll think about it before we go. But he was around all the hunts. And see, I lived at St. Clairsville and Coleraine, Ohio, on
Okay.
Route 250, just south of Cadiz. There's
Oh,
Tappan Lake is over there at Cadiz, Ohio. Good
okay.
hunting around there. I'll think of his name in a minute. But then when I went to PKC with the World Hunt down there, we would send. There's a town spelled the same way, Cadiz, and they pronounce it Cadiz.
No kidding.
Yeah, yeah.
That's
So,
interesting.
and that is your geography lesson for today, boys and girls.
Okay, so now that we've got our geography lesson out of the way, Steve, the whole reason that I came on the podcast today was I
I
am
paid
really
you a lot of money, right?
well, that aside, I'm really excited to hear about your trip to Winter Classic. I want a real brief synopsis on
Mm,
specifically your chance to judge the
mm,
top 10 bench show at
yeah,
Winter Classic. I
yeah.
That's something that I've had the privilege of doing in the past here, and that's something that you got asked to do this year. Let's hear about it. Let's hear about your trip, and give me the bullet points here.
Okay, can I give you a very short synopsis?
Yeah, go ahead.
The Winter Classic started in 1988 in
No,
Albany,
this isn't brief,
Georgia.
Steve.
Albany, Georgia, because we wanted to have a presence in the Southeast. We were on 9 airplanes in 2 days, Fred Miller and I, and we settled on Albany, Georgia. And it was held there for many years. And then after I left UKC, it was moved to Batesville, Mississippi. All right. I was, in fact, invited this year to participate in the top 10 judging. Apparently, UKC keeps a standing all year long of the top 10 dogs, show dogs of each breed. And you probably know more about that than I do, Corey, because I was not involved in anything like that when I was at UKC.
Sure.
We were very much involved in bench shows and held the first UKC World Championship show in 1985. But
Well,
yeah,
if anybody's
go
not
ahead.
familiar with the UKC Top 10
Yeah,
program, a very brief way of breakdown of how it works. Dogs compete annually throughout for the entirety of the year, um, and they compete at local bench shows. They compete at national bench shows, and they are during this time period, as they are winning their categories, they are accruing points based on the total number of entries in the particular class that they won. So the total number of champion males that were entered in a class, or champion females, or what have you. Those points are then tabulated. They're put into a running list that's updated by UKC, and they list the top 10 dogs of each breed that are out there competing throughout the year. And then those dogs, at the end of the year, once the list is finalized, they receive an invitation to come and compete in Batesville at what they call the Top 10 Bench Show Championship, whatever the official
mm-hmm.
title of it is. And there's some pretty substantial cash prizes up for grabs for these dogs. Looks like our, I don't want to steal your thunder here, but it looks
No,
like
go ahead.
the overall winner took home $3,000,
$3,000,
and
absolutely.
each breed winner took home $2,000 on top
Yeah,
of that. Yeah.
yeah. So that was like 6 dogs that took home 2,000 each, and 1 dog that took home 3,000. So
Yeah.
that's pretty salty. Yeah.
Oh, heck yeah.
Well, when I was contacted by the good folks in the hunting ops department, Alan Gingrich and Trevor Wade, department that you used to work in, and I did too, a few years before you did. Um, I I knew enough about it to know that I should be honored to have been asked, and I was.
Right.
And it didn't take me. I didn't stutter too much when I agreed to accept the assignment, because I knew it was, number one, I knew it was going to be fun,
Oh yeah.
and it was. It was a lot of fun. But what I didn't expect was the magnitude of the significance of the individual breeds, and just how much they have impacted the sport of coon hunting, and just how much they have impacted my life personally. Maybe I'll save that just for a minute, because I want to kind of tell you some surprises that I had.
So to flesh this out a little bit for our audience, um, when UKC puts on the top 10 bench show at the UKC Winter Classic, it's judged by a panel of 3 judges, which is
Yes.
unique to compared to other bench shows, even the actual Winter Classic event that's going on throughout the weekend. So who did you serve on a panel with this year? It was Steve
Okay.
Fielder and
Amber Carroll
Amber Carroll.
and I knew her when she was a kid as Amber Bradford,
Yeah.
and watched her kind of come up through the
Black and tan
ranks
lady.
and so forth. Correct.
Yep.
With some really nice dogs down through the years. And also with Scarlett Overton, another person that I had observed in the shows back in my day of sitting behind the desk and calling the entries at the shows and so forth. So I knew I would be working with some very capable uh, confirmation authorities.
Oh yeah.
Uh,
Very
very
accomplished handlers in their own right. Yeah.
accomplished handlers, professionals in every way. Um, so I was excited about that. I knew I was going to be the thorn between two roses,
Yeah.
and it
Hillbilly between two Southern belles.
Southern Bells. That's right. Because
Oh
they both these ladies I think were originally from Alabama.
yeah.
Scarlett lives in Mississippi now, and Amber lives in Oklahoma. So but they're Southern belles, of course. But
Absolutely.
no, yeah, I was excited about that to know that I'd be working with them. I have down through the years experienced panel judging in a lot of different ways, and I really didn't understand how this show was going to go until I got there and kind of walked through the layouts and all that. Do you want me to describe that, or do you want to take the ball and talk about how the show is set up?
No, let's hear you describe it. I think it's more
Okay.
appropriate coming from the person who was there judging.
Well, yeah. Number one, beautiful venue, the Civic Center in Batesville. I really like the way they had it set up this year. They went to a different setup. As I recall, when I was there before, they had the show arena set up on the west end of the arena,
Hmm.
or maybe that's the south end. Let me get this straight. Maybe that's the south end of the arena.
Hang on, everybody. Steve's pulling out his compass.
I love geography and
Yeah.
people, but anyway, I'm going to skip back to what I was going to tell you because it's apropos right here at this
Okay.
point. When we had our little briefing before the show with Alan in a room behind closed doors, just the judges and Alan, and he said, "Okay, there's 3 rings, and you're each going to judge all the dogs, all the win. I don't know how many actually showed up. I didn't get that number, but the maximum entry would have been 70 dogs,
Correct.
10 from each of 7 breeds.
Right.
So each one of us, the 3 judges, would judge all the dogs individually. And he says, well, there's ring 1, 2, and 3. And he says, Steve, I'm going to put you in ring number 1 because you're going to be the slowest.
Oh. Oh
Now,
my.
normally I would be highly offended at that remark. No, it is what it is, folks. 77 trips around the sun kind of slows things down for you. But no, basically, I was talking about the arena. What they did this year is they set the arena up right center of the show part was right in the center of the arena,
Okay.
facing the main entrance. So as you came in the big doors to come into the building and go down the stairs, down through all the seating onto the arena floor, the UKC stage, the main stage and everything was right in the center, right? You would be staring right at it as you walk in. They had the Most of the vendors were to the right, and some scattered around the other way. And they had the crating area and all that was facing the stage. A very large arena. But for this show, they divided that arena into three equal parts. They had a nice, it's almost like a tunnel that the dogs came through as they were, one at a time. Each dog was, I had the uh, levity, I guess you would say, or whatever, the uh, privilege of setting up my gating patterns and all any way that I wanted. The bench, the way they had them set up, were fine with me. I chose to gate my dogs diagonally across the ring because it gave them a longer uh, uh, a longer gait than they would normally have had just going down one or the other side.
Yeah, it gives you plenty of time to see what you're working with.
Yeah. So basically, I would have them come to my corner, which was a sharp left. As soon as they came right in, I would observe the dogs on the ground. I would ask them to please gate the dog down diagonally to the opposite corner and back to me. I give them another peek and then ask them to take the dog completely around the perimeter of the ring. And that allows me to walk down and observe the dog from all going away, um, you know, a side view, if you will, and
Yeah.
whatever. And then, so I guess as it turned out, I probably was a little slower than the others, but not much. And it went relatively fast.
Well,
And
you don't realize how long it can take to put your hands on 70 coonhounds. I
yeah,
mean, especially especially when you're trying to narrow down the field, so to
yeah.
speak.
Well, 70 coonhounds times three,
Yeah.
because each one of those coonhounds had to go through three rings.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
was a three-ring circus, is what it was. No, seriously, it was all those handlers were so prepared. And
Yeah.
I was just really impressed by the young people that were handling dogs.
Oh, that's
Man,
great.
these kids are good. I mean, they're just as good as the adults,
Absolutely.
and they just have a way with the dogs. Each one of the dogs, we had one dog, and I don't know what, it kind of got a bee under its bonnet and didn't want to be touched,
Yeah.
but it was just unusual. But other than that, these dogs were all immaculately groomed. They were, and this is what I didn't expect. I did not expect to have this overwhelming feeling of appreciation and a golf ball sized lump in my throat when I put my hands on some of these dogs. They're magnificent.
Oh my gosh.
If you're a hound person, well, to a lot of people, it's just a hound dog. Oh, you're into
Mhm.
hound dogs. These dogs are amazing. And
Yeah.
of course, these are the cream de la cream.
Yeah. Well,
And
I think that bench shows and people who participate in bench shows often get a lot of flack. Especially if they are a person that doesn't necessarily compete in night hunts all the time. But what we have to remember is that these people who are competing on a national level and producing these magnificent dogs, they are the product engineers of our sport.
oh, yeah.
They're ensuring that we have functionally correct breeding stock to go to if we need it.
Yeah. You look at the dogs that came to the top in this show, and they're the product of extensive breeding programs.
Yes,
I mean, they
absolutely.
didn't go on eBay and say, pick a puppy. And, these dogs are bred for the ring, and they're amazing.
Yeah.
And uh,
Now,
there's so many things that come to mind about that show. To me, number one, the ambiance, the venue, all of that was absolutely top drawer, worthy of the work that these people had put in. UKC had catered in food that was available there for the exhibitors
I don't
and
think I got
anybody
food. I'm just saying.
anybody else that wanted to participate. And so, it was just a top drawer thing all the way
It's great.
around. But some little observations that I had. The dogs were very well prepared, of course. They were immaculately groomed. They were almost to a dog, very good to excellent specimens of their breeds. Uh, the old days of the coonhound bench shows when a guy wrapped about 3 turns of a dog chain around him and pulled old Blue like a Tonka toy into the arena and set him up on the bench are long, long gone in this
I'd
world.
say so. Yeah.
And of course, I went to AKC and I worked with AKC, and I was the guy that had to go to Madison Square Garden and conduct seminars to train AKC's judges on these coonhound breeds as they were coming in. So I know that world, I've seen beautiful dogs all my life. But
Hmm.
I guess what I'm saying is I really wasn't prepared for the emotional uh, buzz that I got on
Yeah.
in doing this. It wasn't all about. I got totally lost in it.
Yeah.
Uh, I've judged shows in the past at a higher level, and I thought, well, now I got to conduct myself just so and so, and I got to make this look really good. And of course, I want the best dog, but all that stuff was going on in the back. Not this time. This time, I just totally zoned out on the dogs.
Yeah.
I just I just really had a ball
Well, and
from
if I can make a point to your point, I was fortunate enough that I had the opportunity to judge this same event several years ago, and I made the trip down to Batesville and participated with a panel of judges, and uh, it didn't really hit me what I was doing until that spotlight hit when they were showcasing each of the individual dogs and kind of giving them their moment, in the spotlight.
yeah.
And they hit all the lights in that place and that spotlight come out. I'll tell you what, I was fixing to pass out. I mean, it was that
Oh yeah.
experience that you're talking about zoning out and focusing on the dogs and giving them their due. And to
Mm.
someone as passionate about coonhounds as you are, it just takes the wind out of your sails
It
in a good
does. It
way. In
really.
a good way.
Yeah. Well, they had a parade, of all the dogs. When that, as you say, the house lights go down and the spotlight comes on, and they come through that tunnel, and they gate them all the way around the ring. Very, very impressive sight.
Yeah.
It
So
is.
I gotta put you on the spot though. Okay. And I don't want you to fear of hurting anybody's feelings or anything like that. I want to know, of the 7 breeds in the top 10 bench show at Winter Classic, which breed do you feel like had the best quality
Overall.
overall? If you had to pick one breed, timer's going.
Mm. That's a tough question. Wow, I hadn't even thought about that in retrospect because I will say this, and I wanted to make this point with you. We were each given the opportunity to use our own scoring system, kind of a scale type thing.
Sure.
You know, and we weren't. It wasn't the old 100 points, 15 for head, or you know, whatever it was. I can't even remember it now. But feet and legs were the heavyweights, you know, and so
Hmm.
no, we were only asked to devise a scoring scale like that would show the range, you know, which the better dogs in the class would be up, you know, at the top. The average dogs would be in the middle, and the below average below. So you could have like a kind of a floating scale there to judge
Sure.
these dogs. That's
Yeah.
the way I understood it, and
Hmm.
that's what I did. And I was kind of gratified when the top 7 were announced after the judging had been tabulated. Right down the line there, the first 5 I had as my number one dog,
Oh wow.
you know, and I guess that's revealing a little bit the way I voted. So I'll probably be, but you know, that showed me that the 3 judges were compatible. We were seeing basically the same thing in these dogs. You know, oh man, you really put me on the spot.
I
Uh,
sure did.
yeah, because there were truly outstanding individuals in each breed,
Hmm.
truly. Uh,
And there
and
always is going to be at that caliber of an event. But
yeah,
I'm
but
asking you.
down through the ranks, you know, it probably fell off less in the Walker breed,
Yeah.
down from the top to the bottom. Overall, was a tremendous class of dogs. Uh, there's some dogs that just are such outstanding individuals. They're going to rise to the top of their breed rather quickly.
Yep.
And I think, you know, the dog that won overall was the red bone dog of uh, of Andy Elburn's. The dog has been proven, you know,
Mhm.
many times to be a top winner. Uh, red bone hounds are so beautiful. I mean, and the red bones in this competition had really good color and
Mhm.
all. There was a dog that kind of surprised me, and I think surprised everyone. And I can't remember the names. I didn't know half the names of these dogs. Some of the handlers I knew, and some of them I did. But the leopard dog, he was not the typical Merle leopard collar. He
Sure.
had that Merle markings around his head. Otherwise, he was just kind of a. It would be close to what we in the prop breed would call a buckskin colored dog, but
Yeah.
he was all dog. I mean, he was looked like you chiseled him out
That
of a
was
block of wood.
that was
What was that?
Chuck Slatery. Chuck
Yeah, yeah.
Slatery and
That
Mr. Moose.
Mr. Moose. Well, he wasn't the typical leopard color,
Mhm.
except as I said, he had that some of that merle uh, pattern around his head and neck. He was a nice dog. Of course, Dave and Kelly Myers always come to a show, you know, more than prepared. And of course, that blue dog of theirs, which is a black and tan, by the way,
Mhm.
it was amazing as usual.
And a
And
world show champion to boot.
yeah, think
Yeah.
about that, you know. And of course, Whitney Killow from Arkansas, she always has outstanding dogs, well prepared, and she showed a blue male that I thought was just absolutely magnificent
Yeah.
this time.
It's interesting when you bring up Whitney specifically because I know that I believe you were judging the finals of the world show in what year?
2016 at
Okay.
Greencastle, Indiana, and I had those 2 handlers there that I've mentioned recently, Dave Myers and Whitney were my final picks. I mean,
Yeah.
they were. and I recall that day giving the nod to the blue female of
Yeah.
Whitney's.
I
I've
I
just
can
I,
I
there's
remember that.
just a lot of dog there. When
Yeah.
you look at one of her dogs, it's all dog. I mean, it's all there. You know, it's not. Sometimes you see dogs that are. Scarlett brought this up, I think, when she picked. I guess it was best female or best male show for the Woodward there from Virginia, and she talked about balance. You
Yeah.
know, and you see so many of these dogs that their front end they're like awesome. They taper off to the back end. They don't have enough, you know. To me, the motor's in the rear end on the dog. That's where all the power comes from. That's where the drive comes from. That's where the strength comes from. People that, and I don't mean to get off on all this, but if they watched me judge a show, or any show, they'll see me doing a measurement, not with a device, but of the depth of a dog's chest. To
Hmm.
me, it's important that the dog has depth, and typically that chest should descend to the elbow of that hound. I don't want to see a gap between that dog's elbow and the bottom of its chest. I
Sure.
like that chest to come down. Some people think of a wide, big, wide chest. No, you want depth. But
Hmm.
anyway, this is not a judging seminar. But I noticed a lot of these dogs, were just
Well,
eh,
speaking to Whitney specifically, I think one thing that's unique about Whitney and a lot of the dogs that she brings to the table and brings to the ring, um, she's had a lot of impact on her breed. And obviously there are a lot of people that have impacts on their breed.
oh yeah,
But you want to talk about a girl who's got the sense for breeding quality dogs. I mean, you just can't argue with the results that these Rockin' W blue ticks are putting out
yeah,
there. I mean,
yeah.
it's insane.
Well, that is, and that's what's so impressive is you see the results of these breeding programs, and the names. And I'll probably get some hate mail for not mentioning this one or that one, but I
Sure.
probably won't. But I
As
won't.
long as you get it and I don't, then we're good.
But there's one thing constant and all that I won't care. But no, but I it's a dog show and it's an opinion, but it should be an educated opinion,
Sure.
and but for an old guy that's been around coonhound as long as I have, it was an extreme pleasure to judge
Yeah.
those dogs.
Well, and
And
I want to say too, Steve, and I just wanted to say thank you to not only you but to Amber and Scarlett as well. It takes quality judges to preserve quality in our breeds. And when we see a lineup of judges like what we saw this weekend going into an event that's being advertised well prior to the event, we can take courage in the fact that we know the best dog's going to win, and we know that the best attributes in every breed are going to be considered, and they're going to be rewarded. So thank you for being a quality judge, and 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 just thank you for what you're able to do, even in this particular aspect of our sport.
well, to me, when I went to PKC, the main reason I was hired there was to start a bench show program for coonhounds, utilizing cash prizes like the night hunts. And I used to get some pushback from some of the hunters. Why are you wasting this money on show dogs? But to me, it's the total package. It's
Mhm.
I was thinking about this a little bit when you told me that you'd kind of like to explore the Winter Classic and all. I can look back when I first went to UKC and I went to Autumn Oaks and sat behind the mic of my first Autumn Oaks and see Junior Lassiter Robert Mings, Sheila Hicks, uh, Charlie Botkins, um, and then on down through Scott Houston and the White River Rick dogs and Little Walnut Tammy with Alan Nelson and absolutely phenomenal dogs. Lee Kearns, Kentucky Rowdy,
Hmm.
and the other good. Lee's always had great dogs. In fact, Lee was there showing a new male that he got from Megan Perez, and won the Walker breed
Oh, that's great.
in the registered show. And Lee is, I think, 83 now. I'm not sure,
Holy smokes.
but uh, but anyway, I've always had the appreciation for these great looking dogs, and many of the dogs that I mentioned owned by these guys, like Junior Laster, for instance, or Lee, and the Finley River Nighthawk dog that uh, Dan Sears had, Ryan's dad. And all. These dogs were night hunt dogs.
Yeah.
These dogs were coon dogs, and so anyway, I think it's always been joined at the hip for me,
Right.
I
Mhm.
and I don't want the old saying back in the hills is you don't want to have to back up to the dog with the feed pan, you want to be able when you go out to feed that dog, stand there a while and look at it and say, that's a nice looking hound.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, it was a real trip, and I enjoyed very, very much.
So
And
the rest of your trip, let's talk about that. Where did you stay? What did you do? Any
well, first of all, no trip anywhere in the coon dog world for me is going to be without a visit to Sterrett, Alabama, and
Okay.
that's the home of my buddy Nubbin Moore. In fact, right before we got ready to uh, uh, record here, he called me. And Nubbin and I go back to my UKC days when he was a field rep.
Okay.
And that's when I first met Nubbin. And there's a lot of funny Nubbin stories, and I've had him online on the podcast before to talk about some of them. He was the only guy that kept the final cast out till about 9 o'clock in the morning at the World Hunt. He said, "Well, you told me to bring in a world champion," so he said, "I just stayed out there till we got one."
No.
We had a They had a deal where you just kind of keep turning the dog loose until that was in Murfreesboro, Tennessee. That's when the dog of Eddie Parker's one. I forget what that dog's name is, but no, Nubbin and I go back a long way, and so it makes it real convenient for me to go up to his place and spend the night, and then it's about a 4 hour drive on over to Batesville. And we make that drive every year in late November to go to the White River Refuge. We go right through Batesville on our way over to the refuge. So,
It's a bucket
uh,
list area. I need to go
yeah,
hunt. I want to hit the White River Refuge, and I want to hit Land Between the Lakes. Those are
yep,
two of my bucket list
yep.
hunting areas.
Land Between the Lakes is good. It's a little more hilly,
Yeah.
than there, but it's
My
an
figure could
iconic area.
my figure could probably improve with a few more hills. Let's just put it that way.
Me too. I used to run up and down those West Virginia hills. Now I just look at them and shake my head.
Yeah, I don't blame you.
Right. But anyway, what Nubbin and I did, I left home here in Florida, Central Florida on the coast, West Coast, uh, about 6 o'clock, 6:30 on Wednesday morning. It takes at least 10 hours to drive up to Nubbins from here. And so I overnighted there. We got up pretty early, 6:30 or so, and drove over to Batesville. Uh, Now we stay at the John Kyle State Park out on Sardis Lake. It's just north. What we do is we take the interstate just north of Batesville, up there to Sardis exit. If you go one more exit, you go to the famous Como Steakhouse. Did you
Oh,
do that
Como.
while you were there?
That was a favorite eatery of the UKC staff back in the
I
day.
guarantee you. It is amazing. They prepare a steak that is just, well, you just gotta be there.
Oh yeah.
And the server that we had, she says, "You want an appetizer?" And I knew what was coming, that football sized baked potato
Oh boy.
and all that. But I said, "Yeah, let's try the mushrooms."
So
Good choice.
okay, so I love food, and a lot of people that know me know I love food. So I'm gonna tell a quick story. When during my time at UKC, obviously I went down to work at the Winter Classic event plenty of times, and there was one year that we went down there, and I don't know what was the problem was, but we were kind of sick of. We were trying to not sick of, but we were trying to look for new opportunities as far as it came to food.
Yeah.
And and one of the girls that worked for UKC at the time, she looked up on her phone. I really love catfish. I love eating any kind of
Oh yeah.
fish. Yeah. So the one of the girls that worked at UKC at that time was looking up on her phone like a seafood restaurant, and
Hmm.
she found this place, and I can't remember the name of it, and I wish I did, but it was the equivalent of like a Mama Jane's kind of name, it just had
Okay.
Mama in it or something. But anyways, so we drive all the way back into the BFE to find this restaurant, and here it's just the lady's house, and she's
No.
cooking inside of her house. She's got the whole bottom story of her house is converted into a makeshift restaurant, and she's making catfish. And that's pretty much all she's doing. And we walk in there, and I'll tell you what, like, it was one of the weirdest experiences of my life, but it was one of the most amazing experiences at the same time because that old lady could cook.
Because Mama knows how to fry those catfish, right?
Exactly. And that's all I got to say about
Well,
Mississippi catfish.
it was funny. I talking about Nubbin Moore back in the days when he was a field rep. We were at South Boston, Virginia, for
Okay.
the UKC World Championship. It was the year that Nelson won it with the Black Dog Buck Two, Northern Buck Two,
All right.
and Jeff Nelson and Nubbin, being the character that he is, had somebody said we were going down to a buffet restaurant there, and it was quite good and all. But it asked Nubbin, "Where do you want to eat tonight?" And he said, "Let's go down there at Mom and M's." Okay, everything was Mom and M's.
Ugh.
And I found out that that is a common saying in certain parts of the South. In fact, uh, country singer Scotty McCreary uh, does a song about that, about a water tower town or something. He said,
Oh, okay.
everybody knows your mom and them.
Ah,
It's
there you
like
go.
mom and them, but they, of course, so all that whole weekend, it seemed like with those guys, I had 15 reps at that time, and they were all clowns. And all weekend long, is where we going to Mom and M's. So you went to Mom and M's and didn't really know
Apparently, and if anybody knows the name of that restaurant, please call in, let us know. I'll be down there next Tuesday.
Yeah. Well, I was talking to somebody the other day, may have been on this podcast, and he talked about they'd taken a trip, and every night they took them out to eat, and it was catfish. He said, I think it was Jim Meeks was talking about that, but that was a big treat at Aurora, Kentucky,
Okay.
at the Willow Pond Restaurant, just outside the Ken Lake State Park. And you went in there for catfish, and that was a real popular watering hole.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. When you first sat down for an appetizer, everybody got a bowl of white beans and onion.
Ooh. Yeah.
a bowl of white beans, onion, and hush puppies. That was an
Ooh.
appetizer for everybody. It was phenomenal.
Oh my
And
gosh.
yeah, well, we could talk about food all night. You want to? Uh, I'm good.
Well, I'm getting a little hungry doing that, so maybe we
I heard you. I
switch
heard
gears.
Yeah. Well, I don't know how long we've been at this here. 54 minutes already, if you can believe that, Corey. Hey, I want to, well, again, you asked me about the other aspects of the trip. Went to Nubbins. We had a great time out at our cabin. We went out, we stayed Thursday and Friday nights. We like to go out there. We always take our own firewood and build a nice fire. And the cabins there at John Kyle Park are just perfect for that sort of thing. Although I do notice that they're beginning to get a little worn.
Okay.
I think they need to do a little sprucing up on the cabins a little bit. They're clean, and I noticed they'd replaced the mattresses and so forth, and that's all good. And I have nothing really, but you can just tell they're getting a little worn around the edges. But it's secluded. Several coon hunters stay out there, but it's a quiet place. It's only about 10 miles out of Batesville, and it's cheap. Um, cheaper than a motel. So we that's what we did, uh, and just enjoyed visiting. I took the tent and the table and the signage and all, and we had a booth there. And Alan did me a solid on that. I was set up right by the stairs going up the stage, right in the main arena. So we had a great location. Lots of folks came by, and in fact, the week before this podcast is airing, our previous week, uh, I ran the interviews, and I think there were like 8 separate interviews that I did at the Winter Classic this year. So it was a lot of fun. Got to meet some of the people that uh, you know participate in our wheel and name spins during the week and all that
Oh,
sort
that's
of thing.
cool.
So yeah,
Yeah.
and got to meet some kids and all. So yeah, it was good. I don't hadn't been in the last probably 3 or 4 years, so I don't know what to compare it to as far as recent Winter Classics, but I thought the crowds were good. Everybody was, in a good mood, and that always makes it better.
Oh yeah.
And I got to have my picture taken with Jackson Cable.
Oh
Now,
yeah, that was a heck of
Jackson
a picture.
Cable is the man.
Oh yeah.
He is the man. He's Angie and Kevin Cable's son. I don't know how old Jackson is. Is he 6 or 7 or something? I
Somewhere
don't
in that
know.
ballpark.
Yeah. He handled the dog in the show and all, but yeah, he's just one of the many coonhound kids that are coming up that they're going to be in charge of this thing one of these days. I know it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Corey, I think his whole voice is about to give out on me. Uh, I don't know. Was there anything about the Winter Classic that you wanted to know that maybe I could share with you? That's about all I know. The hunt part, I know that it rained pretty hard Saturday night. Friday night, maybe off and on. There were some pretty good scores came in on Friday night. The
Yeah.
slams drew really well. They had a slam, I think, on Wednesday and Thursday night. And then they had one of these new ones, one of these, I don't know what they're calling those, super slams or something. This
Yeah,
new
something like
program
that.
with the bigger money.
Right.
So uh, I I know a dog that my buddy, I have 2 buddies named Randy Smith, one in Mississippi and one in Pennsylvania. And Randy in Mississippi is a black dog man. And he sold a dog called Gaucho. And I think Gaucho ended up being second overall this year at the Winter Classic. And I believe the winner was a Walker dog, but I don't have it. You might have that information for it, but I really don't.
Um, I can have it here in just a second, actually.
Of course you can.
Yeah, the marvels of modern technology.
That's right. That's
The
right.
overall winner was a treeing walker male out of the state of Alabama named Night Champion Wade's Lockdown Playboy.
Well, there you go. Well, Playboy had played
Lived up to his name.
significantly. Yeah, this year. So that's cool. Well, I think they do a Sunday morning presentation. It's earlier than the Autumn Oaks, don't they? I mean, don't they give the awards away on, or is that just for the Saturday night hunt, or do they do the
No,
both nights?
I think they do both nights on Sunday morning.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I was back in Alabama, sweet home Alabama, probably on the road to Florida when that happened. But anyway, I logged about 15, about 1,500 miles on my trip from Florida up there. So it's no, little walk in the park to go to the Winter Classic, but it was well worth it. The old Ford turned over 280,000 miles on that trip.
Phew, buddy.
So, yeah, people wonder why I still drive that truck. Well, I bought it the year I retired, and I said I was going to drive it till the wheels fell off, and they haven't fallen off yet. So,
Yeah, there you go.
yeah, it's been a great truck. Well, but that's about it. I will say I want to thank our sponsors, W Hunting Supply. Don't say enough about them on this podcast. They make this entirely possible for me to do this each week, and I big thank you to them. And you won't find better customer service anywhere. There's a lot of great companies out there serving the coon hunters, and I can start naming them right now, and there's a lot of them. But one definitely is the W Hunting Supply, and they've got everything you need for yourself or your dogs, and especially in the field of electronics and the service that you need to keep that gear going. So, really want to thank them. Want to thank my buddy Big Mark Zepp, Zepp Coon Squallers. He makes our weekly spins possible, our wheel and name spins, and want to thank Big Mark as always. But what you got to say, Corey, before we shut this thing down?
I don't have much to say, but I will say I thank you for having me back. It's always a pleasure to get on here and ramble with you. Even
Yep, that's what we do.
yeah, we're good. We're good at filling the airwaves, people. Let me tell
Yeah.
you. But yeah, just I want to thank you again for your participation with making the Winter Classic a spectacular event. That's an event that's near and dear to my heart. I always love going to that event. UKC does such a good job with it, and I know you played a big part in helping get that event started. And that could be a whole nother podcast, people. But
Well,
thank
I cannot tell you the butterflies that I had that first Winter Classic, wondering if anybody would show up. You
well,
know,
they did. They
but
did.
they definitely did, and it continued to build, and it's been also one of my favorites down through the years.
Yeah.
And one of the greatest things about it was for many years is I would go a few days early and go over and hunt with my good dear friend Johnny Brinkley and with Lee Kearns, with David McKee, and those guys, and we always had a great time on Winter Classic week there in Georgia. But
Oh yeah.
yeah, yeah. Well, Corey, we when we talked about this podcast, we were going to talk some about training, and I really want to do that the next time we get together. And it doesn't have to be a long time from now. I get always get a lot of mail from hunters that have questions. They're trying to solve problems with their dogs. I tried a little bit a couple podcasts ago to talk about how I start pups, and it's not rocket science. It's just common sense, basically. Always starts with a good bred puppy. Genetics is number one. But I want to expand on that. I want to do more of that sort of thing with the new opportunities that we're going to have with this podcast that I'm being told about now through sponsorship and other avenues. We want to do a better job than we've done in the past. And I'm so grateful. We had, golly, if I told you the numbers, it was upward of 150,000 downloads that we had on this podcast last year, which is a lot.
Congratulations.
That's a lot. That's
Yeah.
a lot. And I remember when I did my first podcast ever and talked to the network guy and said, well, how many, downloads can we expect? He said, 150, 200 would be real good. So things have come
Blew
away
that out of the
since
water.
But
Fishing with dynamite.
it's not about the numbers. It's about people enjoying the time they spend here. And we're going to be on this Monday morning slot that we've been for so long. And that's one thing I've tried to hold on to because it's just good to. I used to listen to a guy named Don Imus on the radio. Some people heard of him before. To me, he was very funny. I liked the format he had of his radio show. And he was in New York, of course, and then he would do broadcasts from out in New Mexico from a ranch. Loved that show. Look forward to it every day, basically. And so that's what I want to do with this podcast: is people have a place that they can come to and feel comfortable and enjoy the conversation, and maybe write in with a question or a suggestion or whatever. But guys, you don't know how much I appreciate the response that I get to this show, and it's here's Marty Burleson, a guy that I never met before, but I saw his name coming up on these Wheel of Spins, and I met him and his wife at the Winter Classic, and they came by, and I recorded a short session with him. And he says, "Good afternoon, Steve. Hope you're enjoying the Florida sunshine. We thoroughly enjoyed visiting with you and Nubbin at the Winter Classic." Just those little tidbits, snippets like that mean more than you can ever imagine. And just to know that, somehow made somebody's day a little bit brighter, that it's well worth it to me. So anyway, Corey Gruver from Greenville, Pennsylvania, converted plot man. We didn't talk about your plot.
Oh my gosh, I almost forgot I had one.
No way.
No.
Well, we'll do that next time. Folks, I promise you I'll bring Corey back on. My voice is about shot.
Yeah.
I think I talked too much at the Winter Classic. But it's been great visiting with you again this week. And Corey, you got anything to say in a parting shot?
Thanks for listening, everybody.
I'll echo that for sure. And if anybody asks you where's Steve Fielder these days, tell him I don't know where he is, and neither does he. But I got to tell you, it has something to do with dogs. He's gone to the dogs. That was weak. Okay, folks, we'll see you next time.